take it away.
Very good. Thanks, Mark. So I'd like to welcome Ramiero Leon to this presentation. Ramiero and I have been friends for, I don't know how many years, probably 10 years, I'm guessing. And such a great friend in the safety community. At my former employer, we were clients of Vigilant, so I just kind of have to say that right up front. We considered that a great partner and a great support in what we did to support a well-managed, as David Hansen said, well-managed safety program. SHARP and VPP was part of it, and Vigilant definitely supported us well. Ramiero has decades of experience through his service in the U.S. Navy and several top manufacturing companies. He has years of hands-on experience. He's shifted to a consulting role with in-depth safety and health expertise, as well as practical advice on how safety impacts business needs. Ramiero was recognized in 2012 by his peers at the Cascade chapter of ASSE for the Safety Professional of the Year. That's quite an achievement. Um, and I've found his experience through the manufacturing companies that he's worked at, and his relevant advice and support and encouragement and kind of motivation, kind of encouragement to fellow safety practitioners to get the job done, and why it's so important. I've found that particularly inspiring. So with that, you can share anytime your slides there, Ramiero, and welcome to RSA. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, I appreciate the intro, Mike. You're absolutely right. My main thing, guys, is providing strong foundational pieces for success, because that's what it's all about. Safety came to mind in my military days because that was the expectation that we do our job without losses. But it all took strong leadership skills. It's not understanding the code or the right or wrong thing, it's the leadership to help guide you through it. So I think that's always been key. Michael and Mr. Hansen, you're absolutely right. I remember working with you guys when you were end users of Vigilant. Mr. Hansen made them VPP-SHARP certified where he was at because of strong leadership. So, and of course, Mr. Hansen and Mike had a lot to do with it, but you guys have strong leadership skills as well. So that's what's really helpful. It's not just knowing the code, it's knowing how to get the message across for better understanding and comprehension. So for me, that's why I'm going to talk about the orientation process, because for me, either when I was an operations manager or when I got into safety here these last 15 years, it really came down to, I'm going to set the tone from day one as soon as my new employee comes in and gets hired. So those things I want to share, and these are not all of my ideas. These are things that I collected with meeting with members like Carrie and Michael and Mr. Hansen, or even throughout my history and experience on how I have failed, and then I learned from it, because I love sharing how I failed, because I don't want you guys to make some of those same mistakes. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen and get into the presentation. Let's see here. There it is. All right. Now let's double check if this is going to work. All right. Can you guys see my presentation slides? Well, okay. All right. Thank you, guys. So as I was saying, hey, Vigilant, we counsel companies across the Northwest and California on complex employment issues, including affirmative action. One of the things that we have available to our members is, of course, is employment attorneys and safety professionals like myself. We have a bench of 5 safety professionals, a really strong bench on the safety side and the employment attorney side. But this is not a sales pitch. I just need to let you know what I do. All right. So that's me, before beard. I wanted to hide the ugly a little bit better. So let's move on. So let's see here. Learn and discuss our 8-step orientation process. Yes, it's 8 steps. I'll break that down for you. Also, there's tools that are going to be provided. And if you want any copies of these tools, I'm going to have my email address pop up at the end of the presentation. Please write it down, shoot me an email, and happy to share with you all these tools I'm talking to you guys about. So first of all, I do have an outline on my best practice orientation sheets. So it's kind of a best practice of sheets of 8 things that you got to do to make sure you have a solid foundation for your orientation process. The STAR feedback model, you guys all know what the STAR acronym means, right? Let me teach you. Situation, task, action, result, and alternative result. So that's really my feedback model that I love to use to provide positive feedback or some constructive feedback while I'm out there on the floor. I like to follow the STAR method And I have a couple of handouts on that for success, okay? Also, Vigilant has a lot of model legal guides and forms that I like to share with folks. Remember, in safety, sharing is caring. So safety orientation checklist and a job orientation checklist, because sometimes we need to orientate employees when they transfer from one department to the other, right? So that's part of an orientation process we got to bring up again. All right. Now, can common sense be common? Now, when I ask you guys some of these questions, of course, I usually have a room full of people. I ask them, but it's okay, guys. I think I only have an hour, so I'm going to go ahead and get through these and try to get you through this information here. So common sense. A lot of people take it the wrong way with common sense, okay? For me, what I'm talking about is how am I going to set up an employee for success in my control? And in my control is the workplace, right? So I need to create common sense in the workplace by training and education. Now, I remember when I did a presentation here a few months ago, somebody gave me a really good nugget that really resonated with me. And that was that we educate humans and we train animals. Wow, English is my second language, guys. So for me, little things like that really stick out. All right, so I really appreciated that. All right, so yielding to common sense. Sometimes folks are like, man, we've got this one guy who just lacks complete common sense. And for me, what concerns me with that is, especially if they're in a leadership role, is as a leader, our job is to create common sense by providing them that education and training and know-how, because we all come from different backgrounds, right? I'm a young man. I'm a guy from Southern California. And if you ask me to go chop down a tree when I moved to Oregon here back in 2004, post-military, I don't know anything about that. But some guy would say, well, that's common, man. How can you not know how to chop down a tree? That's what we do here in Oregon. It's common to you, but not common to me. And that's why when somebody walks into my facility or a place of my employment, my job now is to create that common sense for them for success. Okay. All right, let's keep this moving. Now, here's a little funny photo here. And what I like to talk about common sense right here. Remember I just talked about chopping down that tree? Now, I have a little bit more street smarts to understand how gravity works. And I understand that if I'm cutting down that limb and I'm sitting on it, I understand how gravity works. I paid attention in science class in middle school and high school. All right, I get that. But sometimes we need to provide that type of education on how do you want that tree to cut down those limbs or shrubs, because you may have somebody to do this activity. You're like, there's no way in heck that's going to happen. Well, if there's a cartoon about it, I'm sure it's happened before. You know, just like Bugs Bunny says, make a left at Albuquerque. Sometimes we should have made a right at Albuquerque. This guy should have definitely made a left at Albuquerque because he's about to hit the ground. Ladder safety, right? So when we're orientating our staff or our employees, we need to train them how to inspect said ladder and how to use it. And what type of environments can it be used? Because sometimes you need to get the right tool for the job. How many times have you guys heard that before in your day, right? This ladder here, obviously this young man here needs to get up on the roof or do something. His ladder's not tall enough. Remember, right tool for the job. But this guy is getting creative to get her done. Remember how I said leadership is key for success and safety? If you have a leader that says, let's just get her done, you're going to get activities just like that. And you need to go ahead and start just realizing that I need to either change my vocabulary and train people what I expect them to do, or you're going to go ahead and start budgeting for losses. You tell me how you want to operate. But this is stuff that is common. This does happen when you do not provide education to your employees on how to properly use a ladder. All right. Hey, it says no smoking. So obviously, if there's no smoking, we do not want an open flame or anything like that, because we might catch on fire probably, right? Well, here, as you can see, there is some chemicals on the ground there. And there's a little diamond with the flame on it. And I'm pretty sure that's some flammable stuff in those gallons right there, right? Those metal gallons. This person here is cutting some metal or grinding on some metal. We got some stuff flying off of it, which now we're causing spark. Hey, I applaud them for wearing safety glasses. I'm more of a face shield kind of dude here. But these are the things that we need to always talk about. So when I was training even millwrights when we hire them, I was like, hey guys, when you grind on something, which way do you want the sparks to go? There's something we always talk about, right? Or as we're welding, we put up welding curtains, right? So nobody that walks by gets that flash in their eye. These are the things that I expect my millwrights to know. And by expectation, though, I need to provide them that education, even though they got that millwright card. I want them to understand what the expectation is of where I work, because there might be places where they worked, they allowed this kind of activity. That was acceptable, right? Okay. Now, I told you guys my background. I was a poor Mexican kid, and my dad's favorite ice cream to buy was that big old 5-gallon bucket of ice cream, the Neapolitan, right? And nobody ate the strawberry for some reason in my house. It was always the chocolate and the vanilla that went right very first. Now, once again, though, humans, we get creative. That's what we do, right? We always get creative to try to get her done. This guy right here, once again, though, says, hey, I'm going to be working with a dangerous piece of equipment. I might want to protect my face. Gets the 5-gallon bucket and puts it over his head. But now he can't breathe. And also, as you guys know, there was a rule change here a couple of years ago when we cut into concrete, right? Because of the silica in it. So these are the things that our employees need to be trained on, because obviously not everybody's going to understand that when you break into concrete or you cut into concrete, there's a silica hazard, a respiratory hazard, right? Not everybody knows that. That's why it's important to educate our team. All right. Think safety first, man. So here's the thing, guys. I enjoy these types of slogans, but I honestly don't like them. I'm not a fan of the banners, you know, because if you're one of those companies that you just do it the right way, I don't really need a big dog and pony show. So here's the other thing too is think safety first. I don't always like to rank things, and safety is one of them. Safety is just when we integrate on how we do business. It's not the first thing nor the last thing. It is something that's integrated within our process of how we measure success, right? Then we ask this young man to get up there on that handrail and make it happen. We've got a great year so far. Think safety first, guys. I appreciate the message. I appreciate what they're trying to do here, but man, you completely missed the boat while you're standing on a handrail putting this thing up. Right? Now, people are like, hey, man, it's common sense. They shouldn't be standing on that handrail. Well, when I was in wood products, one of the ways I knew I had a concern where people didn't have the right tool, whether it be a pike pole, they're trying to reach a log from up above. One way I knew that I didn't give them the long enough tool to reach what they needed to reach was when I looked at the mid rail. If the mid rail is completely beat up with boot marks, guess what they're doing? We need to fix that. We need to identify things like that, and we need to fix that, right? So when we start seeing boot marks up on your handrails like that, that's because we have these types of activities happening. We can't have that. Okay. We all know about trenching and shoring, right? And there's a great video that's been circulating over the years about an OSHA inspector that stopped somebody and got them out of there right before it collapsed. All right, so that OSHA inspector saved somebody's life because they got there. Imagine if they were been 10, 15 minutes late to that area. Look out for that video if you haven't had a chance to see it yet. But here, once again, though, we got this employee, get her done. This may be a third world country. You guys have seen some of those videos. It could be entertaining, right? But I never want to be entertained by someone else's expense. And this one right here, man, you talk about a dangerous activity and not the right process. Well, remember, it's common sense. No, it's not. Not until you train and educate on the expectation on how things and why. Always. Hey, go ahead, Mark. Yes, sir. You got something.
That video you were talking about, Ramiero, is now on TikTok. In fact, it was sent to me last night. My son put it out. So, or he didn't put it out. He sent it to me. But it is on Oregon OSHA's internal YouTube page. We have two of them, and one of them has that on it. But it's also now out on TikTok.
It is, Mark. That's where I just saw it last night. I had a friend that forwarded that to me. They're like, hey, Ramiero, I thought of you when I saw this video. And I'm like, hey, man, this is why I say no such thing as common sense, and also poor leadership on the site leadership's part, because he knows better. That guy knows better. You're not fooling me. If you've been in the business for as long as you have and you're a supervisor now, you know better. Okay, thank you for that, Mark. Okay, now here's the other one. Hey, I need to put a pin through this. And as you guys know, you see that cylinder right there. It has something to do with lifting something heavy. And that is not your best craftsman, probably screwdriver that maintenance person wanted to use, because you know those things are worth some money. Now, this thing is probably from the dollar store, right? You really think that thing's going to hold? I mean, it's creative, and I enjoy creative geniuses all the time. But this is the type of activity we can't have, right?
That falls for me under the old never underestimate the ingenuity of the workforce. I mean, if they don't have the tools, they're going to make it something work. You know, you can see they bent that screwdriver over. It's there. It's not coming out until it breaks.
You're so true, Mark. You know, when I used to share this this photo with my millwrights or maintenance department, I was always saying, guys, I'm going to harp on you guys about always using the right tool for the job. I've made the mistake back in my maintenance days in aviation maintenance of using a 3/4 inch ratchet as a hammer. We've all been there, right? But it's not the right tool for the job. Next thing you know, I got somebody yelling at me because I got a broken tool. In aviation, broken tools is a big thing. I learned the hard way as a little E2 back then, all right? All right. Now here's something else to talk about here. Don't walk in front of moving traffic. Somebody thought it was really important to put up a sign at a busy intersection that says, don't walk in front of moving traffic. So I remember back when I was a little kid and my pop would yell at me all the time, look both ways before you cross. And then that one time that I did not do that, did I get coached? Oh, absolutely, I got coached. So it's the same thing now in what we can control within our facilities, right? We want to educate people on why was that sign up, okay? Remember, there's two things that I always like to give when I give instructions to folks: how we want it done and why it's important to do it that way. Because if you just tell them how, they'll still get creative and do it their own way because they don't know why it's important to do it that way. Why is that process written down, Ramiero? Well, I used to yell at my guys as I'm arming an ejection seat. I used to arm ejection seats as part of my job, and I would yell out step-by-step instructions and say, danger, at the next step. And I would tell my guys, danger, when I say danger, this next step is written in blood. We found this out by someone else's mistake, right? So signage is always key, but we got to always provide some education and coaching along the way, because sometimes we're going to trip up and slip, but we have to be that positive leader to get them to understand, well, this is what I mean by you got to look out for this moving traffic, young man, just like my father did, except, without a belt. That's taboo now. All right. Now we're going to get close to my 8-step process. Here's a little funny for you guys. Wow, you have 3 master's degrees and a PhD. Yes, it's all very impressive. But interestingly, I have no common sense whatsoever. That's not the sort of thing you want to say during a job interview. Well, I don't see why not. You talk about common sense, right? This person is very intelligent, but obviously did not take some coaching tips on interviewing skills or how to be interviewed or what you should be discussing during an interview process, right? So these are some of the things that person may need to have a life coach to help them get through it to get hired for the next job, because I don't think he's going to get this job. I don't know about you guys. Okay, now, can common sense be learned? Can you teach it to someone? Can you learn it from a course, book, coach, blog, or some other method? I'm one of those guys that I think you can, but it's going to take some work. You got to want to know some of these things, right? So I want you guys first to understand is, well, what's the term common sense? Remember, I told you guys earlier, English is my second language. The Webster's Dictionary was my best friend growing up. And then I didn't have all the Britannica encyclopedias. I had that 3-desk encyclopedia that was on the desk, Yeah, anyways, Webster's Dictionary. Merriam-Webster defines it as sound and prudent judgment based on simple perception of the situation or facts. Sometimes folks need to read the situation and facts for them to kind of understand the grasp of what's going on around them, right? So let's use this now in a sentence incorrectly. And I have seen these in employee handbooks, employee safety handbooks. Employee is very smart, but doesn't have a lot of common sense. Safety standard quote. This is that one that really stuck out to me. And I was like, man, these people don't get it. That's why their metrics are way through the roof. Rely on common sense for personal safety. That was in their 1 hour orientation process that I sat down, I watched the member do an orientation. I'm like, how long do you spend on your employees? 1 hour for the new hire. I'm like, 1 hour? So then does the supervisor do the rest of the training? They're like, oh no, they just learn on the fly. Let me write that down. We'll talk about that here a little bit later. Mark, you got something to say on this one, boss?
Just for me, common sense, I can't count the number of times I've gone in and talked to employers and they've told me that they hire their people based on their common sense. And so I always ask, what's the test? How do you verify somebody has common sense? And that's my biggest issue with common sense is you can't verify it. It's really almost a misnomer. I mean, common is, second rate. Common is just something that's average out there. Sense is a vague, but awareness or a vague impression of something. And I don't know, for me, common sense is just, I've seen too many problems where we rely on common sense. Go ahead.
No, absolutely. And let's go back really quick to some of these photos. Now you talk about some of these photos in common sense. Well, have I given this employee training on how to use that cutoff wheel that's cutting into the concrete? And within my training on how to properly use that piece of equipment, I'm going to talk to them about respiratory concerns because I know they're using this tool to cut concrete, right? So I'm not going to rely on their good common sense. I'm going to rely that I provided the right training and education for them to be successful in what they're trying to accomplish, right? Then you look at something like this, you talk about hazard ID training, right? We need to do with our employees. This is why I want them to be able to identify hazards on the fly because they might be creating the hazard while they're working. That's why hazard identification and hazard recognition is important, not just for your safety committees, but that is part of my orientation process with all of my employees saying, hey, here's some common hazards we can see in the workplace.
You're building common sense into your training presentations.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Agree with that.
All right, so now let's get into my 8 steps to create common sense, all right? Okay, so here's the thing, guys. I want you guys to imagine now. Now, I'm not an artsy kind of guy, so don't get me wrong, man. I'm more of a nuts and bolts kind of dude. But if you start thinking about your favorite painter, it could be Van Gogh, Picasso, Da Vinci, Thomas Kinkade. Some of us love those Thomas Kinkade photos as well. But this is why I want you guys to think about your favorite painter. Think about your employees as a blank canvas, and you are the artist who is going to draw that perfect employee that you expect to see every day when they come into work. You need to put in that work on that blank canvas and draw what you expect out of that blank canvas. Because when somebody walks in your door, even though they have 20 years of experience driving forklift, we still have to go through our process of training said employee, correct? That's how you start painting your Picasso painting or your Van Gogh or your Kinkade, right? We want them to look something like that. Now, we don't need to wear all those things, right? But this is what I'm getting at. That's the whole point of these 2 slides, guys, is your employee, when they walk in the door, think about them as a blank canvas. Provide them those tools for success, because your job is to now train them or educate them on what they're about to get into, right? As a career. And we also could talk about how orientations affect our turnover rates. Some people are like, I have a high turnover rate. Remember, I can't spend that much time on orientations. Man, I'm just wasting my time. Out of those 5 people I have in there, only one's going to stay. Well, then that one that stays is super educated in what you need done. Okay? That's what I need. One. All right? So what's next? Let's get into these steps. All right. Step one, starting the orientation process. Hey, we all know HR and payroll is the first department probably they're going to see. We're going to have to set some things up, whether it be a drug screen, audiogram, respiratory protection stuff we got to do. These are some very important things that we got to do. And one of the things that I used to ask our HR and payroll folks to talk about is, hey, visit orientation. Okay, we have that in place already. I want you to go through that with the new hire as if they were a visitor. Why is that? Well, because now we're highlighting some of the things they're about to get into when they come see me. Okay, I want you to highlight some of these things. So when I talk about visitor orientation in company 101 operations, give them some history. Give them some history behind things, right? Because you can see here, welcome new employee to the orientation. They're going to stretch them out as much as they can, right? No, we don't want that.
Yeah, when I was developing the culture at Ryan Drilling, it was, it used to be just a safety orientation. And then what we ended up doing was we had a video from the CEO and president, gave the history of the company, where we've been, where are we going. And then we did an HR orientation. We did a risk analyst orientation, had everybody sign up for benefits. Then we had the safety orientation, and then we would do Rig Pass, which would be your computer program that you had to pass. But definitely when you started investing more on your first 3 days, it could be a 3-day orientation if it really needed to be. But no, we saw a definite change of the people that we were hiring and the people who were staying.
Absolutely. Thank you for those comments, because you just helped me solidify what I said earlier. Because if you really want to focus on turnover, well, on the way out, could you kind of try to collect some data on why they're leaving so quickly? That's one of the things we can do. And one of the feedbacks that I got, because, hey, remember some of those mistakes I made throughout my career? I worked for a big food processing company, 500 employees year round. And then during the summer, we ballooned to about 1,500 employees, okay? And some of those 1,500 are returning seasonal employees that helped us out during the food processing months. But my thing is I did not like revolving doors. I took it seriously. I took that seriously, and I actually took it to heart. I was like, they obviously didn't like me. They want to work somewhere else. Well, what can I do to make it better? Well, just what you said is I brought in that general manager to come in and provide me or our new hires some introduction on themselves, how the company was built, some history of evolution throughout the years, vision and mission statements as well is very important. So one of the things I used to ask was, we all had is one phrase that all of us key leaders, salary leaders said to every employee. We would come up with something. And I expected that message to be resonated throughout the 5-day process, because we went from a 2-hour orientation to a 5-day process. And then by the 5-day process, they're not in the classroom all 8 hours. No. We're doing 2 hours on lockout, tagout. Then let's go for a walk for an hour and a half, and let me show you how lockout, tagout happens in our facility. Because obviously there might be some upset condition and somebody's calling on the radio, they got to lock out and they need a verification lockout. I'm like, hey guys, let's go watch these people lock out. I want you to see it, how it actually works in our facility. So that's how you extend it out. People are like, how the hell are you extending this message out so far, Ramiero? This message is the same. I just want them to see it in multiple ways. Because I'm one of those guys, a nuts and bolts guy, right? I'm not a book guy. So I expect it's probably some of the guys I'm hiring are nuts and bolts guys just like me. So I'm going to give you the book side and the practical side, right? And we're just barely touching on it, because you're not going to be locking out when you're done with me. You still got to hang out with your supervisor until your supervisor tells me you're good to go. Then I give you some locks. All right. So, these are the very important company introductions that need to be done. And we set a tone, right? We're setting a tone on our message to our employees. So I said, like, the superintendents and the mill managers or general managers are coming to me and saying, well, what's the message, Ramiero? Well, what do you expect out of them? Well, if they want to impress me, I just want them to work safe. Okay, well, let's work on that. Let's use that message now. Let's expand on that message now, boss. Oh, okay. And you start seeing their wheels spinning. Next thing you know, we come up with 2 solid sentences of just like what he said. Because as soon as you come in as a new hire, all you're worried about is impressing your boss, right? That always happens. Don't lie to me. Don't tell me you're there for just a paycheck. All right, because some people there, their first few days are really motivated to show that you hired the right person, right? So then, Hey, you really want to impress me? Show me how to work safe. What does that mean to you? You're gonna have to show me. Don't tell me, show me. And then I'll tell you how impressed I am by you. And that's the message that was said by every superintendent, manager, team leader, hourly leader, whatever it may be. That was our message that we share with everybody. Safety expectations meeting. All right, sometimes, like I said, I just segued into setting that tone. I want, if I have operations, maintenance, or different departments in my orientation process, my expectations for that leader to come in one of those 4 or 5 days of orientation, these employees are going to be there. I actually made them champions after a while. I was not speaking for 4 days and orientating my employees. I asked the maintenance manager to come in and talk about lockout and fall protection. I had the shipping manager come in and talk about forklift safety and traffic throughout the facility. Start using your department heads as those positive leaders to get the message through, because eventually they're going to cross paths and they're going to see that that leader really means what they say by day one, because you just put that message in their head. Okay. So we're going to set the tone, right? We're going to want them to talk about reporting hazards, what they're authorized to do or not do, safety standards. And also there might be some examples that they want to know as well. The employees being orientated. Now they have an opportunity to ask questions to key leaders of the facility they're about to start working at. You talk about employee retention, you want to be connected to the employee. Leadership and employees need to be connected. If that happens, there's a disconnect and we have silos, right? We need to stay connected. All right. General safety education. We start talking about general safety education, hey, you know what? It might be me, the safety manager, talking about the general safety rules. I bring the safety committee chairman or safety committee representatives to talk about, any safety policy reviews. And also we could talk about some methods of failure, how we failed in the past. And here's a root cause analysis on how we failed in lockout here last year. We had a really significant near miss on lockout tagout. This is what we learned from it, and this is how we got better from it. Now I'm going to educate you on, hey, when you lock a piece of equipment out, you're not just relying on your eyes. You need to call a buddy to come verify your lockout that you got it correctly. Is that code? No, it's not. It's how we do business. And I want you to learn how we do business, not how you did business, yesterday somewhere else. Okay. So one of the things that I always want to make sure to point out when I'm teaching these policies, procedures, or whatever it may be, is them understanding that common sense did not exist until we just talked about it. Did you know that you had to verify your lockouts? No. Now you do. Now it's going to be common language when you're out there and you're asking for help on the radio, because everybody has a radio saying, hey, can somebody come help me lock out this piece of equipment and verify it for me? That's how you start creating then I'm sorry, I lost the train of thought. You start creating then the way or the method that they're supposed to work. Not just lock out the piece of equipment and get to work. It's lock out, call your buddy for verification, and then you do a risk assessment together to make sure we identify all the hazards before we get in there and start diving into the job, which is radar, what we used to use at Weyerhaeuser. All right, in other places may not use radar. Some people like to use the DuPont stop system for one. There's another one that I really used to love because they asked some really key questions, and it was Safe Start, where they ask you, are you frustrated? Because you know what, as a maintenance guy, I've been frustrated before. I'm like, dang it, I just replaced 2 parts. I thought I had the root of the problem, and that's not the problem. I'm very frustrated. So if you're frustrated, maybe you need to take a time out. And we allow those types of opportunities to get your head on straight before you got into the job, especially if there's an upset condition that we need to fix right away. And I'm talking about people that create widgets, manufacturing, right? When you're creating something, your job is to get something out the door and made, right? But we need to do it safely, part of our process of how we do business. All right, plan tour. This is where I like to involve other champions. I like to create value to whoever's working with me. If you don't have value in what you bring to the table, you're not going to enjoy what you do. That's just me. Well, that's at least the way I operate. I need to have value in everything that I do. So for me, I started asking around for some champions. I'm like, hey, who's interested in giving plan tours to new hires? I want to create a team, and we're going to come up with an actual list of things now, how we want to talk to them about it and what we want to show them. We're going to come up with an actual process that we expect out of our champions that are giving the plant tours, okay? So think about that, talk about what's the plant tour things that you want to stick out like a sore thumb for you as you're showing your new hires around. Do you want to show them fire extinguishers? You want to show them where the AED is? Heck, I know for me, the big one for me is, where's the lunchroom at? Sometimes, you don't know what's stressing these employees out. And if we start knocking some of these stressors out of the way, saying, hey, this is what your lunchroom's going to look like. Hey, the restroom is right there. There's the men's and the women's. If you need to wash your hands and you don't need to use the restroom, got some hand wash stations over there. These are these little things that are going to stand out to that new hire that you actually care about them. You're not just bringing them in because they're a warm body to create widgets for you. All right, job skill training. This is where I want my supervisor or a mentor to be involved. I'm sorry, hold on a second. So safety committee, I'm sorry, number 5, plant tour. I'm still on it. Safety committee, I forgot about this one because I thought it was my step 7. Safety committee, I want my safety committee to be involved and engaged with my new hires. So if I know I have a new hire from shipping for the shipping department, I want the shipping representative to come in and talk about shipping with them or with the entire crew. I start utilizing my safety committee as champions to help my process of the orientation be stronger, because now they're hearing it from their peers, right? How do you know your safety program's a success? When you have peer-to-peer intervention to help out for success. You don't need that supervisor to come in and talk to the employee. You want it to be peer-to-peer, right? Because sometimes that supervisor is in a meeting, on a conference call, on a Zoom call, doing training somewhere else. You never know, right? So I want peer-to-peer intervention because that's how I know the safety program is working. So I'll involve the safety committee in that manner because I want to provide value for that safety committee. If that safety committee member does not feel value in what they do, they just show up for an hour meeting and that's what you're going to get. So remember, you get what you put into them. All right, job skill training, supervisor or mentor. This is a very important piece now on who they're going to be working with. Once again, that supervisor, that frontline supervisor who's helping write those evaluations. Now they can set the expectation very clearly to that employee, okay? They can also do some hands-on training with them, what the expectation is. Hey, here's the JSAs or JHAs for us to review to talk about these things. And by review, I don't mean, hey, sit down right over here. Here's a nice big binder for you. Have a go at it. That is not training. That is not the expectation that I have for training for JHAs for new hires. My expectation is, yes, we read. Can that be boring? Absolutely. But then what we do, we wake them back up by grabbing that JHA or SOP and going for a walk and showing it to them. That's how you hit it once more, right? So as we start looking at these things, you start showing them, hey, this is what our locks look like for lockout, tagout. This is where you find the fall protection equipment. Oh, and also, hey, you're gonna have to go see Ramiero again to issue you some fall protection gear because you get your gear, we don't share stuff. Now they just found out even more on how you operate with fall protection. Because for me, I used to wear that stuff and I used to hate wearing someone else's sweaty stuff. I'll tell you that. Did I do it? Well, sure, because we have to get the job done and we want to do it safely. But did that feel good? Oh, heck no. So I remembered that. So when I had an opportunity to manage a fall protection program, anybody that needed fall protection, I don't care if it costs me $350 a pop, I'm going to get you your own dang harness. I don't want you sharing or readjusting things or readjusting the buckles, because sometimes you don't even readjust the buckles. You let it hang out like a saggy diaper. Trust me, I've seen it. It's not comfortable. I get it. And I tell them that. I get it's not comfortable. But if it's hanging like a saggy diaper, it ain't going to work, man. If it's going to shift a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, you're going to be seeing soprano the rest of your life. Only if you're a male, of course, right? It's my jokes. I got some jokes. All right, number 7, process tracking and record retention. HR department, safety managers, supervisors. This is where that gatekeeper is going to look at it. Do I look at my check sheet? It all got checked off. Okay, cool. The job's not done. You don't just file it away or anything like that. You go back and check when you measure for success. You go back and check the pulse. Say, hey, man, we did this orientation checklist with you here a couple of weeks ago. How do you think it went? And I'm asking for specific feedback, not by just, How it went is how I break the ice. Then I start asking strategically, what did you think about our fall protection training? Did it meet the mark? Did it help you? Are you wearing fall protection yet? Oh, no, not yet. Have you locked out yet? Oh, yes, I have. Did the training make sense for you to be able to be successful to lock out that piece of equipment and where to find the procedures? Absolutely. Now, this is just effort, guys. Sometimes we don't have this kind of time, right? You're like, man, Ramiero, I'm already doing 10, 12 hours a day. I know. I used to do those 10, 12 hours a day with you guys, but this is what it took. It just depends on what losses you want to have, and you need to identify those things so you can spend more time on it. And that's how I would pick and choose where my battles were. Okay. All right. Follow up. Okay. For me, once again, I just started the feedback process by looking over the checklist with them and talking to them about it. But now I'm going to follow up on overall performance and provide strategic feedback using the STAR feedback model. I have a handout for that. 1, explaining the STAR feedback method, and 2, an actual worksheet for you to be able to document this said discussion with them, okay? Feedback is very important, okay? I'm one of those guys that the more feedback, the better, because that's how I get better. If you tell me I suck, tell me how I suck so I can get better, okay? That's all I cared about. This is why follow-up is very important, not just by your HR department, but your key leaders in the workforce, okay? HR, absolutely. I want them to ask, hey, how's your interaction with your supervisor? Hey, that Ramiero guy who gave you that training, what'd you think of it? That's, once again, we're collecting data for feedback, right? And also, I want to do this before the 90-day probationary period is up. I do not want to wait till day 88 to provide feedback for success. If they only have 2 days to adjust, are they going to pass their 90-day probationary period? Did I do them justice to help them be successful? No, I want to check with them every couple of weeks throughout their 90-day process. And I expect their supervisor to check with them daily as well. They're like, man, that's a lot. That's a high expectation. Well, if you want to perform at a high expectation level, you need to provide high expectation type of training and education and communication. Okay. All right. I'm coming to my end of my show here. This is what I want you guys to understand. I want that common sense theme in your head going through. I want you to just make it go bye-bye. You know, dig a 6-foot hole, cover it up, put some concrete on it, put some big boulders on top of it, make it go away. Just get that out of your mouth. Just get it out of your mouth. Because we're not going to ever create it until we put in the work to make it happen for them. Okay. That's our jobs. That's our duties to help them be successful as leaders. Okay. Now I'm just a safety guy. You're the safety leader. You set the tone. You set the expectation. You can't just put everything on the operations or superintendents to say, hey, you need to write them up. No. Safety manager, safety person, what did you do to help that operations person for success as well? Don't just put that responsibility on their shoulders. That's a lot of responsibility. We got to share that responsibility as leaders, okay? All right. Now, like I said, I have handouts for checklists, for orientation process. I've got my best practice sheet on these slides that I created, a one-sheet best practice with some of those little comments of, hey, lockout, tag out, you might want to talk about this. I got that sheet ready to go for you guys as well. And there's a STAR feedback model documents. If you guys want those, please write down my email address in the slide. Shoot me an email. Happy to share it with you. And anything you guys have any questions for me in the future that you just want to pick my brain, man, sharing is caring once again, okay? I appreciate you guys for giving me the time. It's 12:51. I want to leave an opportunity for feedback and also any comments, or maybe we could talk some things out loud as a group. I don't mind. We got about 9 minutes. What you guys got?
Hey, Ramiero.
Yes, sir.
I remember you said something about when we're doing something that we're in a hurry and, you know, maybe the machine's down and we've already tried 2 things and nothing's working right. We're getting frustrated. And I remember I worked at a place where we struggled with injuries in those situations when you know, the machine's not running and we need to get it running is a problem we don't have very often. And so now I have people trying to do something that they don't do very well, and now trying to do it really fast. And, you know, one of the things that we found that worked, and, you know, and I've talked about this before, Mark Hurliman kind of helped us arrive at some solutions here, but we put together a pre-task plan. And, you know, our crew that was trying to get things up and running and get things working again, they would go through this pre-task plan. And you know, a lot of people think you're gonna take extra time away from the project, but it was the strangest thing. Overall, we ended up with a better plan going into the project, and it didn't cost us any extra time on the other end. And now people aren't getting hurt. It was just win-win-win all around. Mm-hmm. And so definitely some good stuff there.
No, you know, David, you're absolutely right, man. You hit the nail on the head, because sometimes I would hear that from operations managers like, oh, safety's slowing down my operation. I'm like, no. Safety's supposed to work with the operations, part of the system of how we create the widget. So we need to put the system in place that we're not going to rank it or push safety out of the way because we need an extra 10 minutes to make more widgets. I expect us to do it safely, right? And you're absolutely right. So for me, the risk recognition stuff came from Weyerhaeuser, and that's what really ingrained in my head the radar process. And I know other places like Morocco use laser, you know, so you've got different formats of it. But for me, all I cared about was, did you take the time to make sure your head's screwed on straight? And then what I would keep an eye on or keeping my ears open in the radio and saying, okay, wow, they're down at this piece of equipment again. Now I'm going to walk over there, but not to be that guy overlooking the process. I'm going to go in there and say, hey guys, just follow their training, follow your process. If you get frustrated, you know, hey, we got 4 millwrights here. Not all 4 need to be touching that widget. You guys tag team. You know, if you're getting frustrated, you're about to break your knuckles. No, man, we do not want to break those knuckles. Tag team, swap out. And I was like, I'm gonna leave you guys alone because you don't even need looky-loos. And I used to also give my millwrights a little bit of a tip. I was like, guys, it's like, if we have a big activity happening, my expectation is the risk recognition tool is being used, and use danger tape if you don't want any looky-loos. They're like, what? Are you just giving us a tip to keep the mill manager away from us? I'm like, I'm not doing that to be sneaky. I'm doing that because I understand as a maintenance person, when you have too many eyes on top of you, sometimes mistakes can happen. So I expect you to follow the training that you've had, use the risk recognition tool, and I'm gonna treat you like a professional. Use the danger tape to keep people out if you want, especially if you're picking things, right? Any other questions, folks? I've had some comments before, because I digest everything that gets thrown my way. I reviewed my comments from this presentation from a couple of years ago. One comment was, well, Ramiero, I'm not really manufacturing. I'm really more in the healthcare industry. Well, it's the same process. We're just, instead of you making widgets, you're curing people. But we still have a level of employees and training we need to provide for them to be successful. So if you're in healthcare industry, bloodborne pathogen is probably a big one for you, right?
Which is interesting because I'm actually mimicking the Good Catch program from a hospital system, because they're looking at good catches for patient safety in terms of, you know, as well as healthcare safety. So I think when you sit there and you break the mold of safety's only, you know, manufacturing, construction, oil field, you know, something that could really, things that could hurt and kill you. But, you know, so actually I have to leave here in about 4 minutes, but I actually got the DJC Hard Hat Award. So yay for us. But that's because we've been here at Osland has been saying, take it home. Because when we sit there and teach my guys HAZCOM in the field, I teach my staff here in the office, same HAZCOM, but how can they then bring it home for them to know what kind of chemicals they use, you know? So we've been really trying to push safety, not only in the field realm, but as an entirety. I mean, you ask my 4 and 5-year-old why we have rules, and they say to keep us safe and happy. So, you know, but yeah, so I have this whole Good Catch program based upon a healthcare hospital system.
Beautiful. I do leadership training, safety leadership training as well. One of the first modules we work on is do no harm, and do no harm comes from the medical field, right?
Yep.
And that's what we care about as leaders. I want them to understand, what does do no harm mean? Everything you say as instruction or feedback, there's a ripple effect of doing no harm. I want you to understand that as a leader. And so I know our physicians get do no harm, and that's the expectation I want as leaders that are out there in the workforce.
Yep. Well, I actually have to I have a meeting with the president. Again, thanks for being on the board, and I have your email, Ramiro, and I'll be emailing you. Thank you.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Romero. It was a great session. I really loved it. I liked the part at the very beginning. You said, educate people and train animals. That really struck home with me because we got a new puppy being trained.
Oh, man, you telling me I got 3 of them down here right now.
Good job. Thank you very much.
I appreciate you, Mark. And I know, like, remember Dwayne Grange, you, Mark, and Dwayne Grange were one of the big ones at the beginning of my safety career. Used to guys harp on me about SHARP Safety Alliance. And Dwayne Grange and you, Mark, were a big part of my success and my journey here today.
Well, again, welcome. And thank you very much for doing this for the RSA today. We definitely appreciate it.
Anytime, folks. Anytime. I'm here for everybody.